A single moment can change everything, your future, your reputation, your very sense of self. Today's story begins on a sweltering summer afternoon in Atlanta, Georgia, when a routine lunch break spirals into a confrontation that shatters illusions and sets off a chain of events no one could have predicted. A bystander captures footage of an arrest, but what happens next stuns both the police and the public. Allegations fly, hidden motives are laid bare, and shocking alliances form in the heat of the city's bustling streets. Brace yourselves for twists, turns, and an ending that redefines justice and karma itself. Summer days in Atlanta can feel like you're swimming through the air. Thick humidity clings to your skin, and the sun is relentless, beaming down and reflecting off every car hood and glass pane. This was precisely the kind of day Felicia Bennett found herself braving as she hurried down Peachtree Street on her way to a Starbucks meeting. She was a local entrepreneur, juggling an online boutique she'd founded a few years earlier. Normally she preferred to dress casually, but today she wore a crisp blouse and a pair of fitted black slacks. The restaurant manager she planned to meet had insisted on a face-to-face negotiation about potentially showcasing her designs in local pop-up events. Felicia was excited about the opportunity, hoping this new collaboration might help her brand reach more people. At the same time, across town, Officer Russell Donahue was nearing the end of his shift. He had been a member of the Atlanta Police Department for nearly 10 years, initially motivated by a genuine desire to serve and protect. But with the years, his perspective had become clouded by cynicism. A recent disciplinary hearing allegations of misconduct had left him paranoid, on edge. Officially, he had been cleared of wrongdoing, but the whisper campaign among some colleagues lingered. In his mind, he was a man under siege, unfairly judged by those who didn't know the difficulties of policing the city's high-crime areas. That morning, dispatch assigned him to a routine patrol near Midtown, the same area where Felicia was heading. He was tired, he was irritable, and he had the uneasy feeling that something would go wrong before he could clock out. As Felicia arrived at the Starbucks on 10th Street, she could see the shimmering haze of heat rising from the sidewalks. People were out in droves, sipping iced coffees, rushing to work, or simply enjoying a break. She spotted the restaurant manager, a well-dressed woman named Paula, who waved from a small round table just outside. They began talking animatedly about business prospects, product lines, and the logistics of hosting a fashion pop-up. Everything seemed to be going smoothly. Felicia felt a sense of relief this meeting might be exactly what she needed to take her boutique to the next level. Half an hour into the meeting, Felicia's phone buzzed. It was her intern, Tasha, frantically texting about a missing shipment that was supposed to arrive that morning. Not wanting to be rude to Paula, she glanced quickly at her phone and typed a short reply, promising to follow up. She could feel her heart rate tick up slightly. She hated any disruption in her carefully laid plans, especially when it came to deliveries. After all, a delayed shipment meant disappointed customers. Still, she smiled politely at Paula, trying to keep her focus on the present. No more than a mile away, Officer Donahue's day took its fateful turn. A call came through on the radio. The voice crackled, reporting a possible sighting of a suspect near Piedmont Park, a young man involved in a series of car break-ins earlier that week. Witnesses described him as tall, slim, and wearing a red jacket. Donahue had a fleeting thought. The last thing I need is to chase down a suspect at the end of my shift. But duty was duty. He responded to the call, turned on his cruiser's lights, and headed toward the park. Still, the suspicion lingered in his mind. I'll probably be stuck with paperwork all night. Meanwhile, Felicia wrapped up her meeting with Paula on an optimistic note, strolled down the block, and decided to cut through a side street toward Piedmont Park. This route might be faster for her to swing by a local mail service office where she could track down the missing package. She would then hop on the train back to her home office to finish her day's work. The sun scorched her face, and she used her file folder to fan herself in the stifling heat. Moments later, as she neared the park, Felicia observed the swirl of police lights in the distance. She was used to seeing patrol cars in the area, especially in summertime when tourist activity soared and petty crimes sometimes followed. She thought little of it until a figure came sprinting across her path, a tall, slim young man wearing a bright red jacket. He dashed past Felicia, nearly knocking her over. She stumbled, dropping her folder, scattering invoices and notes all over the sidewalk. From behind her came Officer Donahue, running at full tilt, panting heavily under the weight of his vest. Without breaking stride, he yelled, "Stop right there! Police!" But the suspect kept running. Felicia knelt to gather her scattered papers, trying to stack them quickly. People nearby slowed, glancing curiously at the chase. One or two filmed with their phones, as often happens these days when something out of the ordinary unfolds in public. The entire scene was chaotic, siren lights flickering, Officer Donahue shouting commands, and the suspect weaving through bystanders. Felicia just wanted to collect her documents and get out of there. But that's when it happened, an unpredictable moment that would upend multiple lives. The suspect in the red jacket made a sudden turn, disappearing behind a food truck. Officer Donahue, temporarily losing sight of him, swiveled his head, scanning the throng of onlookers. His eyes fell on Felicia, who was kneeling amid her scattered papers. She happened to glance up, and for a split second their eyes locked. In that fraction of a second, Donahue's mind raced. Same height? No, not quite. Red jacket? She's not wearing one, but something's off. He was out of breath. Adrenaline surging, frustration mounting at having lost the suspect. The crowd was watching, filming, and he felt the old paranoia creeping back. They're waiting for me to mess up again. His heart hammered in his chest. Instead of resuming the chase or calling for backup, he zeroed in on Felicia. Felicia sensed his scrutiny and immediately felt uneasy. She grabbed the last of her papers and stood to her full height, a quiver of fear in her stomach. She had done nothing wrong, yet the expression on Donahue's face was anything but friendly. He approached her fast, eyes narrowed. In an instant, Felicia's worst fears seemed to materialize. "Ma'am, stop right there," Donahue barked. Felicia froze, her folder clutched to her chest. "Is there a problem?" she asked, voice trembling despite her attempt at composure. Donahue ignored the question, stepping closer. "Drop that folder." Confusion washed over her. These are my business papers." He gestured with his hand, as if it were a stand-in for a baton. "Drop it." Felicia complied, letting the folder tumble to the concrete once more. The gathering crowd began to stir, some onlookers edging nearer, others flipping their phones to recording mode. A mother walking her child pulled him closer, not wanting him to witness a potential altercation. Without further warning, Donahue grabbed Felicia by the arm, twisted it behind her back, and began to force her to the ground. Shocked, Felicia tried to maintain her balance. "What are you doing?" "I haven't done anything," she cried. Pain radiated from her shoulder as he locked her wrist. "Stop resisting," he yelled, pressing Felicia down, her cheek nearly scraping the sidewalk. The humiliation was immediate and potent. She felt the eyes of strangers on her. She heard the whir of phone cameras capturing her terror. Where was this coming from? She had seen the real suspect run past, so why was she being targeted? And then, as quickly as he had seized her, Donahue spat out, "Stay on the ground." With one knee on her back, he reached for his radio to signal dispatch. His heart pounded violently. He had to act tough, to show the onlookers he was in control. Yet, In the corner of his mind, a small voice whispered that something about this was all wrong. The suspect was male, had a red jacket, and had just sprinted away. What am I even doing with this woman? Felicia lay there, stunned, tears threatening to spill. She felt utterly powerless. The asphalt radiated heat, scorching her forearm. She gasped for air, partly from panic, partly from the weight pressing down on her. She could hear people talking, some shouting in her defense. She didn't do anything. One voice cried out. Others yelled at Donahue, telling him to let her go. But Donahue was lost in his own storm of adrenaline and anxiety. The more the crowd yelled, the more he felt cornered, judged. He barked at them to back off. A faint voice within told him this was a public relations nightmare, unfolding in real time, but he ignored it. Time seemed to slow. The sound of sirens, the glare of sun, the onlookers' voices, it all blended into one surreal blur for Felicia. She wondered if she was about to be another statistic, another news headline. She thought of her family, her business, her dreams. She silently prayed for someone, anyone, to intervene. And then someone did. A slender man in his mid-30s, wearing a bright green hoodie despite the heat, stepped forward. "Hold on," he said, approaching with his phone held high, still recording. His name was Kevin Santos. He was not someone Felicia had ever met, but in this moment he would become her greatest ally. "Officer," Kevin began, voice surprisingly steady, "this woman is not the person you're looking for. I saw the suspect run that way." He pointed toward the direction of the food truck, far from where Felicia lay pinned to the ground. "Back off!" Donahue snarled, pressing his knee more firmly into Felicia's back. She let out a small cry. "Don't make me arrest you too." Kevin didn't budge. He held his phone out in front of him. "I have this all on video. If you keep hurting her, you'll be in major trouble, man." Donahue was breathing heavily, eyes wild. His gaze flicked from Kevin to the crowd forming around them. He could almost feel the city's spotlight turning on him, the same way it had during his disciplinary hearing months ago. But in his swirling confusion, an emotion cracked through. Doubt. The woman beneath him was nothing like the suspect described on the radio. If he was wrong, and it was looking more likely that he was, he'd be held accountable. Anger flared, but he also realized he needed to think about how to save his own skin. In that suspended moment, he made a choice. He roughly pulled Felicia up and pinned her hands behind her, marching her toward his cruiser. Kevin and others followed, still filming. Felicia stumbled along, tears streaking her face, uncertain if she was under arrest or being detained. She tried to speak, but her words were drowned out by Donahue's frantic radio calls. "Dispatch, this is Officer Donahue," he said, voice shaky. "I have a suspect in custody." "Officer, please verify," came the crackling reply. Description was a male wearing a red jacket. Donahue cut the radio abruptly. He turned to stare at Felicia, who stood trembling against his cruiser, her arms pinned behind her. He lowered his voice so the crowd wouldn't hear. "Listen, I need to ask you some questions. Cooperate, or questions." Felicia managed to say, her voice quivering with rage and disbelief. "You tackled me to the ground. You nearly broke my arm, and I'm not even the person you're after." Kevin stepped closer, phone still pointed at them. A few others joined him, forming an impromptu semicircle around the scene. "Officer, the suspect is long gone. Why are you still holding her?" Donahue glanced at the swarm of onlookers, bristling at the public scrutiny. He felt trapped. He'd already manhandled Felicia in front of cameras. Backing down entirely might look like an admission of guilt, fueling the narrative that he was incompetent or worse. The tension was palpable as the crowd grew bolder, some urging Felicia to file a complaint, others chanting for Donahue to release her. By now, he had a white-knuckled grip on her wrists, and Felicia bit her lip from the pain. Suddenly, a second patrol car arrived. Out stepped Officer Martha Green, a fellow APD officer known for her calm demeanor. She quickly assessed the situation: a distressed, handcuffed woman, an angry crowd, and Officer Donahue looking panicked and disheveled. In a swift motion, Green approached. "What's going on here?" she demanded, addressing Donahue while scanning the crowd. Donahue forced out a response. She was resisting, looked like the suspect. Green's eyes shifted to Felicia, who was wearing a blouse and black slacks, no trace of red on her. She turned back to Donahue, skepticism evident. "Let me see your body cam footage." Donahue stiffened. He had turned his body cam on during the chase, but in the confusion, he might have missed capturing crucial moments. "Or maybe I forgot to re-engage it after the chase," he worried. He reached down, fumbling for the device, attempting to recall if it had been recording the entire time. Meanwhile, Kevin, still recording, announced to everyone that he had the key footage of Donahue's takedown and that he was prepared to share it publicly if necessary. Officer Green, sensing the hostility from the crowd, stepped toward Felicia. "Ma'am, let's get these cuffs off you," she said gently. She waved Donahue aside. Felicia winced as the metal restraints unclasped. Tears of relief sprang to her eyes, her body still trembling from the shock. The crowd cheered in a mixture of relief and anger. Some demanded Donahue's badge number, others threatened to call a lawyer. Overwhelmed, Felicia leaned against the cruiser, hugging her sore arms and fighting to catch her breath. She felt a surge of gratitude toward Kevin for stepping in and toward Officer Green for injecting some sanity into the madness. But a new dread also took hold. Will this end here, or is it just the beginning? Officer Green led Felicia away from the crowd, gesturing for her to sit on a nearby bench. "I'm sorry about what happened," she murmured. "Let's get you checked out, see if you're okay." Felicia nodded, still trying to compose herself. Green signaled for an ambulance to evaluate Felicia's bruises, then turned to speak with Donahue, her expression grim. Kevin introduced himself to Felicia, offering a bottle of water. "I got everything on video," he said, voice full of concern. "That cop had no right to do that to you." Felicia accepted the water, her hands trembling as she took a sip. The relief was momentary. Her mind reeled with questions and fear about what might come next. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I don't know what would have happened if no one stepped in." Just then, the ambulance arrived, and paramedics examined Felicia's arm and shoulder. She had no broken bones, but her wrist was sprained, and her upper arm bore bruises shaped like finger marks. The paramedics advised she go to the hospital for a thorough examination, but Felicia was adamant she had to figure out how to file a report to ensure Donahue was held accountable. She also wanted to recover her papers, which were likely still scattered on the sidewalk. Officer Green tried to defuse the situation, promising an internal investigation. She urged Donahue to remain silent until a supervisor arrived. Donahue looked visibly shaken, as though the gravity of what he'd done was finally sinking in. His mouth was a tight line, and he refused to meet anyone's gaze. The crowd around them hadn't dispersed. If anything, more onlookers had gathered, capturing angles and commentary. Kevin's phone continued recording, and every few seconds he'd narrate for social media. The tension escalated further when a woman named Janet Ellis emerged from the onlookers. Janet was a community activist, well known in Atlanta for her outspoken stance on police accountability. "This is exactly the kind of misconduct I've been talking about," Janet proclaimed, raising her voice so that everyone could hear. Tackling an unarmed, innocent black woman who was just minding her own business. "We cannot stand for this." An uncomfortable hush fell over the immediate area. Officer Green tried to maintain decorum, but Janet was relentless. "We need names, badge numbers, and an immediate statement from the department." If we don't get it, this footage goes to every local news station in Atlanta. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. The city's complicated relationship with the police was no secret, and this incident felt like gasoline poured on a long, smoldering flame. Finally, a police sergeant arrived. Sergeant Lionel Merrick, a tall man with a stern face and a careful demeanor. He assessed the situation by first talking to Green, then Donahue, and eventually Kevin, who showed him the phone footage. Felicia sat on the bench, paramedics still by her side, while curious bystanders circled. Merrick concluded that Felicia must provide a statement. He also instructed Donahue to hand over his body cam, uncertain what it had captured. The crowd wanted immediate answers, but Merrick, in typical police fashion, said only that a formal investigation would be conducted. Felicia mustered the strength to tell her story to Merrick, how she'd left her Starbucks meeting, tried to retrieve her shipment, and encountered the actual suspect in the red jacket running past her. Officer Donahue tackled me out of nowhere, she recounted, voice breaking. He never asked me a question, never explained why. And when this gentleman, she gestured at Kevin, tried to help me, the officer threatened him as well. Tears slid down Felicia's cheeks again, and her raw vulnerability made it painfully evident. She was just an ordinary person caught in a terrible situation. As Felicia's testimony concluded, an unexpected commotion erupted across the street. A pair of young men, eyes wide, were running toward the scene. One of them wore a red jacket. It was the actual suspect from earlier. Out of breath, he addressed the cops, panting, I'm turning myself in, man. I'm the one you're looking for. But I didn't do any of that stuff. That lady had nothing to do with it. The crowd gasped. Even Donahue seemed startled, stepping back, uncertain how to react. Sergeant Merrick moved quickly, grabbing the suspect by the arm, reading him his rights, and directing him to a nearby cruiser. While the suspect's friend shouted claims of innocence, the suspect seemed resigned. I saw what happened to that woman, he muttered. I ain't gonna have that on my conscience. She had nothing to do with it. Felicia stared at the young man in disbelief, a swirl of emotions flooding her, relief that the truth was now undeniable, anger that it took so long, and exhaustion from the entire ordeal. The crowd's mood shifted from anger to outraged bewilderment. How could the cop have messed up so badly when the suspect basically wore a neon sign, a red jacket? Sergeant Merrick, now faced with overwhelming proof of Donahue's misconduct, told Felicia she was free to go, but strongly recommended she head to the hospital. He also provided instructions on how to file a formal complaint, but Felicia's voice shook with determination. I'm going to do more than that. I want justice. I'm going to talk to a lawyer. With that, Felicia allowed the paramedics to guide her into the ambulance, Kevin and Janet promising to follow shortly. The onlookers gradually dispersed, some still recording, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Officer Green escorted Donahue aside for a private conversation. He stood there, shoulders slumped, face blank as though in shock. He was given mandatory leave pending investigation, a protocol for any officer who used force under questionable circumstances. He didn't protest. He just stared at the sidewalk where he had tackled Felicia minutes earlier. 2 days later, Felicia sat in a plush chair at her attorney's office, an upscale law firm in downtown Atlanta. The environment was polished with glass walls, sleek furniture, and a breathtaking view of the skyline. She felt small in that space. Although she had worked tirelessly to build her own business, she wasn't accustomed to legal battles of this magnitude. She'd had a sleepless night, replaying the incident over and over, feeling the ghost of Donahue's knee on her back whenever she tried to lie down. Her attorney, Ellen Park, was a sharp, petite woman with an air of calm authority. She specialized in civil rights cases and had a track record of holding law enforcement agencies accountable. She listened intently to Felicia's story, occasionally scribbling notes. When the narrative finished, Ellen leaned forward. "This is a clear-cut case of wrongful detention and excessive use of force," she said. "The video footage from Kevin Santos will be crucial." Felicia nodded, hands trembling. "I just don't want him to get away with this." Her voice cracked. The emotional toll was profound, and her injuries still ached. The bruises served as a daily reminder of her ordeal. Ellen patted Felicia's hand gently. "I understand. We'll file a civil lawsuit against Officer Donahue and the Atlanta Police Department, citing violation of your constitutional rights. We'll also push for an independent investigation. You have a strong case." Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Donahue faced his own reckoning. He sat in a modest, dimly lit living room, his wife perched across from him, arms crossed, face etched with worry. The local news had caught wind of the incident, especially after Kevin Santos's video went viral on social media. It was already circulating on various news channels, headlined as "Officer Accused of Brutality During Failed Arrest." Donahue's name had not been officially released by the APD yet, but rumors spread and his neighbors whispered. His wife, Sarah, had pleaded with him to hire a lawyer. She insisted, "You can't face this alone. This is serious." Donahue looked haunted, gaze unfocused. "I didn't mean for it to go that way," he mumbled. "I saw the suspect run, lost him, and there she was." My mind was racing. A storm of regret and defensiveness warred within him. Everyone was watching, and I panicked. Sarah clenched her jaw. "Russ, this isn't just about you. People are furious. And if the department tries to make an example of you, you could lose everything: your job, your pension, maybe even face charges." Donahue said nothing, burying his face in his hands. The walls felt as though they were closing in, mirroring the claustrophobia in his mind. He recalled the look on Felicia's face as he forced her to the ground, the pure bewilderment, hurt, and fear. It gnawed at him. He had sworn an oath to protect the public, not traumatize them. In the weeks that followed, Felicia's story reached a broader audience. Janet Ellis organized a community rally at Piedmont Park, the very place where Felicia had been tackled. Activists, students, families, and church leaders showed up to demand justice and call for police reforms. They held signs reading "Justice for Felicia" and "Stop Police Brutality." Chants echoed through the park, amplified by the still scorching summer sun. Felicia was invited to speak, even though public speaking wasn't her forte. She approached the makeshift podium, shoulders tense. Cameras flashed from local news stations. She took a deep breath. "I'm just an ordinary person who was living my life," she began, voice wavering. "And in a moment, that officer saw me as a threat when I was doing nothing wrong." The crowd cheered in empathy, and she found the strength to continue. "No one should experience the fear and helplessness that I felt. We need accountability, and we need real change." When she finished, applause erupted. Janet squeezed Felicia's shoulder in support, whispering, "We stand with you." Kevin was also there, filming for his YouTube channel, which had skyrocketed in popularity after he posted the video. He interviewed fellow protesters, giving them a platform to voice their demands. "This story isn't just about one officer's mistake," he told his viewers. "It's about a system that too often allows mistakes to happen over and over." Meanwhile, the Atlanta Police Department tried to contain the fallout. The police chief gave a press conference, acknowledging that an internal investigation was underway and that Officer Donahue was on administrative leave. She insisted that the APD would not tolerate bias or misconduct, but her words sounded rehearsed, failing to appease skeptics who had heard similar promises before. Within APD headquarters, tensions were at an all-time high. Officer Martha Green, who had intervened that day, found herself in a tight spot. Colleagues whispered that she had hung Donahue out to dry by stepping in too forcefully. Some officers supported her actions, believing she had done the right thing by halting Donahue's assault on Felicia. Others felt she had broken the blue wall by not backing her fellow officer, regardless of the context. One afternoon, as Green was finishing her shift, she was summoned to the office of Deputy Chief Parsons. A tall, imposing figure, Parsons wasted no time getting to the point. "I want you to testify truthfully about what happened," he said, steepling his hands on his desk. "But be mindful of how you represent this department. We're already in a PR crisis." Green's jaw tightened. "With all due respect, sir, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything." Donahue pinned an innocent woman to the ground. Parsons nodded slowly. "I understand your stance, but be aware your testimony will be heavily scrutinized, both inside and outside these walls." Green left the office with a knot in her stomach. She believed in integrity, but she also knew that rocking the boat within a police department could be a career ender. Regardless, she resolved to stand by the truth. The night after, she typed a detailed report of the events she had witnessed, attaching her body cam footage, which unfortunately only caught the aftermath. The crucial footage that would truly matter was Kevin's phone video. Months passed, and the civil lawsuit Felicia filed gained momentum. Ellen Park gathered mountains of evidence, witness statements, social media footage, records of Donahue's prior disciplinary hearing, and Felicia's medical reports. The more they uncovered, the more it became clear that Donahue had multiple complaints against him in the past for aggressive tactics. While none had been conclusively proven, the pattern was damning. Felicia felt both vindicated and frightened by this revelation. Vindicated because it wasn't an isolated incident, he had a track record of skirting the line. Frightened because it underscored just how easily something worse could have happened to her that day. She had nightmares about him drawing his gun instead of tackling her. During depositions, Felicia sat across from Donahue for the first time since the incident. He appeared stoic, but she couldn't ignore the tension in his posture. When questioned about the day of the arrest, his responses were clipped and defensive. "I believed she was the suspect due to the chaos of the moment. I never intended to harm her. I was concerned for public safety." Her attorney pressed him on specifics: the suspect's gender, the suspect's distinctive red jacket, the fact that Felicia obviously wasn't wearing red, and the physical force used. Donahue squirmed under scrutiny, offering half-formed excuses. At one point he almost slipped, admitting that he'd felt pressured by the watching crowd, but quickly corrected himself. When Felicia took the stand in another session, she described her terror, the pain, and the humiliating feeling of being pinned down like a criminal. Her tears were genuine, her voice trembling. Donahue avoided eye contact the entire time, staring at the table instead. Outside the courtroom, activists rallied, carrying signs demanding justice for Felicia and accountability for law enforcement. The media hovered, capturing every entrance and exit, quickly editing short news segments that aired on local television. Community support for Felicia had only grown, with many local businesses offering to help her boutique recover from any setbacks. In fact, Paula, the manager she had met at Starbucks, arranged a fundraising fashion show to help Felicia cover legal costs, among other expenses. It wasn't easy for Felicia to step back into public appearances. She felt exposed, vulnerable, and anxious each time she saw a police uniform. But the tide of support also gave her strength. She saw how many people believed in her cause, and that solidarity helped quell the lingering fear in her heart. As the lawsuit proceeded, there came a twist no one anticipated. In a pre-trial hearing, Ellen Park introduced a new witness, someone who had seen Donahue just after the suspect fled and before he tackled Felicia. This witness was a city maintenance worker named Terrell Simmons, who had been changing trash bags along the street. Terrell had initially hesitated to come forward, fearful of police retaliation, but after seeing Felicia's plight on the news, he felt compelled to speak up. Terrell testified that he heard Donahue's radio chatter just before the incident. According to Terrell, Donahue was receiving a direct description from dispatch, clearly stating male suspect, 6'2", red jacket. Immediately afterward, Donahue saw Felicia, who didn't match any of these descriptors. Despite this, Terrell heard Donahue mutter, "I need a scapegoat," under his breath, or something to that effect, sounding frustrated that the real suspect got away. Terrell confessed he wasn't sure if those were the exact words, but the implication was that Donahue needed to make some sort of arrest or show he had control of the situation. Moments later, Donahue tackled Felicia. The hearing room fell silent, the shock nearly tangible. Felicia's eyes widened, horrified that she was possibly assaulted to cover Donahue's embarrassment at losing the real suspect. Kevin, seated in the back, clenched his fist. A scapegoat. That term hung in the air like a dark cloud. Donahue's attorney immediately tried to undermine Terrell's credibility, insinuating he might have misheard or had reasons to lie. But Terrell remained steadfast, unwavering in his account. For Felicia, this revelation felt like a punch to the gut. It confirmed what she had suspected, that Donahue's actions had nothing to do with genuine confusion and everything to do with aggression and saving face. Even the judge seemed taken aback, calling for order when murmurs spread through the courtroom. The culminating days of the trial saw a wave of tension crash through the city. By now, the case had gained national attention. Local businesses weighed in, city council members made statements, and social media boiled with debate. Some tried to frame Donahue as just another stressed officer who made a mistake in a high-pressure job, but the majority, having seen the videos and heard from witnesses, condemned him for abusing his authority. As the arguments concluded, the jury deliberated. Felicia sat with her attorney, clutching her mother's hand. Kevin was present, camera in hand, documenting the day for his YouTube channel. Janet Ellis was also there, sharing live updates with activists outside the courthouse. Hours dragged on, each tick of the clock ratcheting up the anxious energy in the room. Finally, the jury returned. They found Officer Russell Donahue liable for violating Felicia's civil rights and using excessive force. The judge awarded Felicia significant damages, a sum that, while it couldn't erase the trauma, signaled a strong message about police accountability. Felicia's eyes brimmed with tears, a wave of relief mingled with lingering pain. Outside the courthouse, reporters flanked her. She took the podium, reading a short statement. "I'm grateful to the jury for recognizing the injustice I suffered. My hope is that this will spark real change in our community and our policing. I'm not the first person this has happened to, but I pray that stories like mine become far less common in the future." As for Donahue, the department swiftly dismissed him following the verdict. Criminal charges from the district attorney's office remained a possibility, pending review of the evidence. In the court of public opinion, Donahue's reputation was in shambles. Other officers distanced themselves from him, and the hostility he had once directed at civilians was now directed at him by the world at large. Karma did not end there for Donahue. Within a month, he found himself facing new allegations. Additional complainants emerged, claiming they'd been manhandled or harassed by him in prior incidents. Emboldened by Felicia's success, they filed their own suits. Donahue's life unraveled, legal bills mounted, and job prospects vanished. Sarah, his wife, left him, taking their children with her because she could no longer handle the shame and financial turmoil. Donahue's once staunch confidence gave way to a hollow, bitter isolation. Meanwhile, Felicia focused on healing. She underwent therapy for the emotional trauma, sought physiotherapy for her wrist, and gradually felt her body and spirit recover. The local community rallied around her boutique, driving more traffic to her online store than ever before. The pop-up event that had once been a mere possibility now became a well-publicized affair, with Paula championing Felicia's designs in multiple Atlanta eateries and even proposing expansions to other cities. Customers flocked, partly in solidarity, partly because Felicia's clothes truly were beautiful and unique. One balmy evening, Felicia found herself at the official launch of her new pop-up, which was held at the very Starbucks where she had met Paula. It was a symbolic full circle. She wore a sleek, black jumpsuit of her own design, her wrist still bearing faint bruises, but healing well. Kevin was there to film the event for his channel, and Janet Ellis showed up to celebrate, as did many community members who had supported her throughout the ordeal. Looking around at the joyous crowd, Felicia felt a swell of gratitude. Yes, she had endured a horrifying experience. Yes, she had faced terror, humiliation, and the real possibility that her life could have ended on that sidewalk. But through it all, she discovered the strength of unity and the power of standing up for what's right. As she sipped her iced coffee, gazing at the warm lights reflecting off the windows, she understood that life would never be the same. She had stepped into a purpose bigger than herself, a call for justice and accountability that echoed far beyond her personal ordeal. In the weeks and months that followed, new dialogues opened between community activists and the Atlanta Police Department. Training programs were updated, body cam policies revised, and some community leaders were invited to help shape department reforms. Nobody claimed it was a perfect solution, but it was a step. Felicia, for her part, continued her advocacy in measured doses. She collaborated with Janet Ellis on community workshops, teaching people how to document incidents of potential police misconduct and how to know their rights. She also quietly funded scholarships for local youth aiming to enter public service, believing that, if policing was to change, it would need new generations committed to compassion and justice. Her life was forever altered, but she refused to let trauma define her. Instead, she used it as a catalyst for growth and meaningful impact. Ironically, she never did get that initial shipment of boutique items on time. The day she was assaulted, the package ended up lost in transit due to a label error, only to appear 2 weeks later at her office. Felicia laughed when it finally arrived, thinking, so much can happen in 2 weeks. So much can change in a single moment. And there you have it, a seemingly ordinary day on a sweltering Atlanta afternoon that led to a shocking incident, a fierce legal battle, and a transformation that reached across an entire community. From Felicia's nightmare on the sidewalk to the witness who bravely came forward and exposed the truth, this story is a profound reminder that justice may be delayed, but it can never be wholly denied when people stand together. Felicia's journey proves that from tragedy can come awareness, reform, and a renewed sense of hope. If this story moved you or opened your eyes, please show your support, like, share, and subscribe to this channel so we can continue bringing you more eye-opening and inspirational stories. Your engagement helps spread important messages far and wide, making sure the fight for justice and unity remains a beacon for all. Thank you for watching. Stay vigilant and stay inspired.